On today's Tech Help for Churches, you may be surprised by these 7 sneaky headline tricks to increase your church's blog traffic. Hi everyone, and welcome again to Tech Help for Churches. My name is Paul Allen Clifford, and I'm your host, and I'd love for you to join the conversation. So head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact, and you can leave me a comment there. You can also find my voicemail number 1-877-763-3246. That's 1-877-POD-ECHO, or you can leave me a comment there, as well as dropping me a line on email, paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com. You'll also find that I have my Twitter handle listed, which is Paul Allen Cliff, all spelled the shortest possible way, PAULALANCLIF. And I'd love for you to reach out to me that way as well. So, before we get started, let's talk about a couple quick things. First off, I want to talk about my pastor's book. This is coming out really soon. It's called What Life Are You Waiting For? And it is a book all about pursuing the call that God has on your life. So what were you made to do? What were you designed to do? Why, after giving your life to Christ, are you still on earth? Well, I think there's a very simple answer to that, and I think that God really wants to engage you in His mission of saving a lost and dying world. So if you will head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlife or trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlifebook, either one should take you to the Amazon link where you can save a few dollars right now because it's available for pre-order. And since it's available for pre-order and won't actually ship until the beginning of May, you can save a few dollars right now, and they won't actually charge you until it ships. So that's something that's really good to know. Now, as an aside, if you're more of an audiobook person, I happen to know that my pastor spent last week recording the audiobook for What Life Are You Waiting For? So that's going to be really cool when that comes out as well. So if you're more of an audio person, let's say you're listening to the audio podcast of this, that might be a way to go. So hopefully when that comes out, it'll be on Audible, and I'll have a code for you where you can maybe download it for free. So we'll see about that when it actually happens. But I don't know if that's going to happen right now or a little bit later. So I also want to talk about Patreon. Patreon is a service that allows you to do what formerly only really rich people could do, and that is to be a patron of the arts. So if you go to patreon.com/Paul Allen Cliff, you can support the show. One thing that you should know is, including what the salary I'd like to make, which when you do the math, you'll realize this isn't a lot of money. It costs about $2,060 a month to put on the shows of the Church Tech Cast Network. So right now I'm in the red and have been in the red for years, and so I thought that I would give you the opportunity. If everyone that watch these podcasts, listen to them, follows me on Twitter, etc., if everyone just gave a dollar, if you just skipped one candy bar a month, then we could do some really incredible things. I could have a dedicated office space with better bandwidth, and we could do this all in HD 1080p, and I wouldn't be necessarily looking at the streaming indicator wondering if it's good or not because of the iffy internet service that I have here at home. So all those things would help take this up a notch to the next level. I could probably hire some people to help out, and that would be really cool as well and enable me to put out more shows faster. So head over to Patreon, patreon.com/Paul Allen Cliff, PaulAlanclif, and just slide $1 my way. If you feel led for more, that would be great. And if it's not your thing or you can't afford it, don't feel bad at all. I only want people that really feel like they really want to support the network and have been looking for a way to do it, to join in. So head over there and do that today. Okay, so let's get started, shall we, with the with these sneaky tricks. Now, one thing you should know is in the headline of this particular show, I used 5 of them. So of the 7 that I'm about to list, 5 of those were in that headline. One of them is Be Simple. So that one did not go well with these other tricks, because they're not. I don't want you to use all 7 of these tricks. These are just 7 different tricks to use. So first in the headline is use numbers. When people see numbers on a blog post or podcast or whatever, they know, okay, I know exactly how much I'm dealing with. Guy Kawasaki, who has written several business books and was the Macintosh product evangelist for Apple in the 80s, when he gives keynote speeches, he always does a 10-point format, with the point being that you know that there are 10 points, and when he gets to the last one, you know, oh, I don't have to sit here for another hour for him to keep going through this. Well, it's kind of the same way. If you blog with numbers, people can just skim through those and read them or not read them, and they'll learn a little bit even through skimming. So a lot of people are very attracted to numbers, and it just makes it a concrete way to do things. So that's why I started with 7. Next, claim to reveal something hidden or a trick. So the next word I used was sneaky. Sneaky, something hidden. And I also mentioned them as tricks. Sneaky tricks. So what it is, the reason that I did that is that intrigues you. You start thinking, well, what am I missing? Are these things hard? No, they're tricks, so they're pretty easy. Are they things that I'd figure out? No, not necessarily, because they're sneaky. So that's intriguing to you. Now, I will admit, when you use as many of these sneaky headline tricks as I did in the title, it can sound a little spammy, so I don't want you to use as many as I did. I was just kind of trying to prove the point that there's something at least intriguing about these things. Next, tell the audience how they'll feel. Did you notice what I did? I said, you may be surprised at these 7 sneaky headline tricks. You may be. Now, some people will say, and I couldn't believe number so-and-so, or you'll never believe what happens next. You see a lot of that with cat videos. These parents left their kid alone with a cat, and you'll never believe what happens next. Or, and what happens next made me cry. See, all those things are things that are intriguing, and they tell the audience what to feel. So, not that I would do this all the time, but there's just something engaging about claiming how they'll feel. Now, as long as it's true, I don't want you to say, in this case, I could have said, 7 sneaky headline tricks to increase your church's blog traffic. Number 3 made me cry. Number 3 is telling your audience how to feel. That wouldn't make you cry. That's a bold-faced lie. Now, you'll notice that there are some blogs that do that with stuff that you're like, I don't think you're telling me the truth. So, I do want you to be forthright and honest. This is tech help for churches, after all. So, I think that really what you want to be is honest, because you won't permanently get audience by lying to them about what's going on. Instead, what you want to do is you want to tell the audience not, well, you don't want to lie to them, but telling them how they'll feel will be more intriguing, and it'll get them to engage with the content. Number 4, piggyback on news events. Now, we're in the middle of March Madness as I'm recording this. And my favorite team won last night, and they're a number 8 seed, the University of Kentucky Wildcats. So that's actually trending pretty well, because I think they're the lowest seed that is still in the tournament, if memory serves. And so I could have piggybacked this on a news event by saying something like, and this would work really well in my area and amongst basketball fans, if I piggybacked on this news event by writing a blog post that said something like, here I'm going to use 2 of these tricks. 5 things the church can learn from the University of Kentucky Wildcats Final Four strategy, or something like that. See how I'm piggybacking on a news event, so that anyone that searches for the news event very well might come across my blog post. And I also did another thing that I'll tell you about in just a second. And I used a number. So I didn't use 5 tricks, but I used 3 of these tricks. So that created something really that will speak to a few different people. Number 5, simpler is better. So this is one of the tricks that I did not use in my headline. Ideally, you don't want to do like a 3-sentence headline. You don't want to have 4 dependent clauses in the headline. You want instead to write a headline that is as simple as possible while being as engaging as possible. Do you see how that's better? Because if people get bored through the headline, then they're not going to want to read the entire blog post. If it's so long that they have to read it 3 times to understand it, because it's got 2 subordinate clauses, then a main clause, and then another subordinate clause in the headline, that's no good either. So my headline is not simple, and that's one of the weaknesses of that headline, actually. Because I was trying to use as many of these tricks as possible in the headline, it became less simple than it could have been. But I did rewrite it one time to make it more simple than it was, because the original title was Increase Your Church's Blog Traffic with These 7 Sneaky headline tricks which may surprise you. I changed that to you may be surprised at these 7 sneaky headline tricks to increase your church's blog traffic. Now it's about the same amount of words, but it just, I thought that it flowed better and it made it simpler to understand. So that's something else that I would advise you to, is try and make it simpler to understand and use fewer words rather than more. One of the resources I looked at said that she tried to keep it under 60 characters. So if you're in a tweet, that's you've got 140 characters in your tweet to tweet. So that allows people to retweet that with no problem whatsoever, even if they're using the old school RT Twitter name syntax or the less popular old school via syntax. So that's very helpful as well. Next, use keywords. Now, what do I mean by use keywords? In an earlier show, I talked about using keywords in sermons. Now, what's a keyword? For almost anything in the English language, there are synonyms. So I've noticed that my first grader, my younger daughter, she is doing this a lot, where she will ask us what we mean by something, and most of the time what we mean, she would understand it if we used a synonym, a word that means the same thing. But she doesn't, so she asks about that, and then we try and clarify by using a word that she does understand. Now imagine that Google is in fact on the comprehension level of a first grader, where they know a lot of words, but they may not know the words that you're using. So what you want to do is you want to figure out what would people actually search for. That's a keyword, and you want to use that as opposed to maybe the word that has a slightly different shade of meaning that you might be tempted to use. So I think I used an example kind of like this in this previous show that I'm telling you about. If you were writing a blog post about your church's wedding series on marriage, and you called it Matrimony Matters, that's probably going to get less engagement than if you entitled it something like Maximizing Your Marriage, or Marriage Tips, or Marriage Help, or something like that. Now the second, Marriage Help, might seem a little more boring, but it's also much more likely that someone would be searching for marriage help than Matrimony Matters. You see? Now, Matrimony Matters is more engaging to the mind, but getting there, you could do both. By the way, when I title a book, what I do is I have the clever title as the main title, and I usually have something more keyword rich as the subtitle. So, my original title for Tweeting Church was Tweeting Church, Good News in Only 140 Characters. I changed that to something like, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but something like Tweeting Church, using how Christian communities can use Twitter to engage in evangelism, outreach, and some words like that. Do you see how that's different? Twitter was nowhere in the title before. So if someone searched for, I want a Christian Twitter book, it wouldn't show up. But when I retitled it, I used the word Christian and Twitter in the subtitle, so it's much more likely to show up. So use keywords. And number 7, I've already touched on this. Target it. Tell people who see your headline if it's for them. So while this will exclude some people, because I could absolutely just be generic in how I title things on trinitydigitalmedia.com and churchtechcast.com, being too generic, while it increases your audience, it also lowers the engagement that people are likely to feel. Because by targeting it, you're saying this is for you. If it is for you. Now, if it's not for you, you might think, oh, I bet there might be something that I could learn from that, right? So I sometimes read secular stuff, business stuff, because I think, oh, there's something I can learn from that. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help churches. So I try and target all my stuff towards churches so that church leaders will see that and think, oh, that's perfect. That's just for me. How did this guy know that I needed this? Because if it's targeted that well, you'll think, how did he know that I needed this? As opposed to, oh, he's just trying to get anyone to read it. So targeting is really helpful. And you'll notice in my headline I said, your church's blog traffic. So that is pretty specific. It says, wait, your church not only has a website, but it has a blog. And you are a church. So that's specific. Now, a business leader might see that and say, I bet this guy's looking at it from a different side. Maybe there's something I can learn from his stuff. So I'm not excluding them altogether. I didn't say, and no one else will benefit from this. But I did say, if you're a church and you have a blog, you very well may benefit from it. So do you see the difference? By targeting your content, you're actually making some people feel very, very much like it was written specifically for them. If I had $1 for every time I've heard people at my church say things like, and it felt like he was talking right to me about my pastor, talking about where they were, that's really an important component. It's something that I think that we leave out a lot in the 21st century. But I think that it's valuable. There's something about feeling like someone is talking directly to you as opposed to talking to the audience out there somewhere that is just so engaging. So I want you to look at these 7 tips and use them in your church's work. Now, why would you do this? Because headlines matter. The reason that headlines matter, and look at a newspaper, the reason that they do is because a headline gets people to read it. You might notice if you read newspapers that sometimes it feels like the person that wrote the headline didn't write the article. That would be because the person who wrote the headline may not have written the article. It's the case that the person that writes the headline is writing to get people to read the article, and the person that writes the article is getting people to keep writing the article. So that's why I'm telling you to do these things, is I want you to be engaged. I want you to get people to read what you've written, get people to engage in your thoughts, and I think that way you'll have more impact and be able to touch more people and go out and change eternity. Welcome to BH over in the chat room. So hi to you, and hi to anyone else that wants to join me for these live shows at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. UTC during the summertime, 4 p.m. from the fall through the winter. And I'd love for you to go ahead and make a comment on the blog, make a comment on YouTube if that's where you're watching this, subscribe to the podcast, and leave a review on iTunes. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com.